Okay, well, thanks everyone for showing up to this discussion of our upcoming Power 2021 2.5 exercise, preparing for public safety power shutoffs. This won't take too long. This is our plan for tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about the power safety shutoffs and the exercise. Dan will talk about recommended go bag contents and some tips on setting up an effective communication post. Karen will talk about the very important emergency reporting form, which she created in consultation with our 911 center, and how to use it, how to fill it out, and also some information about completing your 214 log. Scott, I understand, can't be with us tonight, so I'll talk about triaging simultaneous emergencies and how to get ready for today's or next week's workshop. And of course, we always welcome questions at any time. Just to help us keep track of things, if you haven't already, please edit your screen name to include your call sign. So, any questions so far? We expect more power shutoffs later this summer and fall. As you probably know, extended power shutoffs kill cellular and internet-based phone service, and actually almost all landline phone service in at least parts of the county. The October 2019 shutdown lasted for 3 days. We're hoping we don't have something like that again, but it's entirely possible. So our role is to set up communication posts in affected areas for emergency reporting, connecting via repeater or simplex to ARES hams who can be in contact with the 911 dispatch centers. Nobody knows when these power shutoffs are coming, but they are likely. So, point of this training, what you should know after you've been trained. Here's what you ought to be able to do with some confidence to establish a communication post at some remote part in the county in reliable radio contact with other hams and through the 911 center. We'll talk about putting up appropriate signs to indicate to the public that emergencies can be reported at your location. And the main point of the exercise is to practice actually forming concise radio reports of emergencies quickly, accurately, based on information you get from presumably excited, perhaps panicked people. So that's the skill that we'll spend most of the time in the exercise practicing. We'll talk about dealing professionally with people and complying with public health directives, which means social distancing still, and possibly wearing a mask. We'll talk about handling multiple simultaneous requests for aid, and then we will arrange it so that during the exercise you actually get multiple simultaneous requests and get to practice doing the triage. And an important part of all of this is keeping an accurate log of all emergency requests. Logging is particularly important for reporting emergencies because it establishes when the report was received, and that's used for measuring response time for the emergency responders. So here's how it's going to work. At your scheduled time, the time you signed up for, you should be at the sheriff's office at 5200 Soquel Ave, corner Chanticleer. And with your DSW badge and with your go bag, we'll do the first step will be a check-in and a go bag evaluation by Bob and Kathy. They will ask you to show the equipment you've brought, show your go bag, and give you helpful comments about it. Then you will move to a designated communication post location and have 10 minutes to set up and check in with net control. And then for half an hour, we'll have actors showing up at your communication post at different times, reporting different types of emergencies. And your task, of course, is to using the forms that we've provided to document them and quickly and concisely and clearly relay them to net control. Following that, you'll have 10 minutes to strike your communication post, secure it, and we'll give you an informal evaluation. If you're not fully vaccinated, please, you need to wear a mask and want to maintain social distance at all times, whether you're vaccinated or not. This is an outdoor activity, but we want to be safe, and we want to give reporting parties and the public the assurance that we're being safe. So go bag contents. Before I let Dan launch into that, anyone have questions about any of that so far? Dan, you're on.
Okay, well, the main source of your go bag checklist is a document that hopefully you were emailed along with other documents from Joe Marie a few days ago. And it's got a list of in 3 categories: required, which is indicated by an X, recommended, indicated by R, and optional, indicated by O. So that's going to be the list that your go bag will be compared to when you arrive. And you know, for your setup on Sunday, you certainly will need your 2-meter 70-centimeter radio that is programmed to the latest frequency list. Although you could program these frequencies that we're using manually, that would be just fine too. But in general, you're certainly going to need to have your radio programmed before you actually go out on an assignment. We also need an external antenna because our little whips on our antennas are just not going to be good enough for many repeaters in the area. And of course, it's a good idea to have the frequency list printed out on your radio manual. Don't rely on your memory, because under stress, your memory will turn to mush like mine does. And of course, the DSW, as we mentioned, and your license and driver's license, so both licenses. So the 214 log sheets, of course, we're going to need that for every assignment. Good to have at least 5 with you, although you probably won't fill out. Well, you might fill out more than 1 this time. For an actual assignment, I don't rely on any source of maps that requires the internet, because that's the whole point of us doing this, is that we're assuming that our cell phones will not have internet access. So it's good to have a paper map of this county. I would also do both, have a paper map and download maps on your smartphone. The report emergency signs are, we have them already, and we will, it's possible that the county will also be providing something. And safety vest, certainly. You know, it doesn't have to say ARES, but it should be a class 2, which has to do with the number of reflective surfaces. But you know, when you buy it, it'll say class 2. I don't think that's specified on the list. Yes, it does. Yellow or lime colored. Then, of course, we need our hand sanitizer and some way of indicating how far 6 feet is away for social distancing. We certainly don't know what state we'll be in as far as COVID restrictions when the PSPS happens. You know, maybe everything will be completely back to normal, but it's not likely. You know, you need to be prepared for your assignment with actually no support. So you're going to have to bring your own food, water, toiletries. It's not likely that there won't be any bathroom facilities, but it's always best to assume there's not going to be. You know, certainly for the practice on Sunday, we do have a very civilized, you know, bathroom facilities. You need to bring your own tables and chairs this Sunday and for the actual PSPS. And, you know, if you have a night assignment, you're going to have bring your own lighting. Hopefully like a lantern or something you can set on the table that you brought. Does anybody have any questions so far?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So just to be clear, for the exercise, the report emergencies here signs will be provided to us, but normally in a real exercise, they would
No,
available.
As far as I know, they will be provided for the actual PSPS.
Okay.
Unless somebody on the call has different information.
That's certainly our intention. During actual emergencies, things change quickly, but we have the signs made up, and be our intention to equip everyone with them during the actual deployment.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
External antenna, I have a mag mount that I usually put on my car. What do you recommend then for this exercise? Bringing a metal pie plate or something?
The exercise, it's only important that you demonstrate that you have it. Although, if you have some way, like Dawn, for example, on the first training, she had brought her own mast and a way to affix it to her car, if I'm remembering correctly. But I know she had a mask and an antenna on it. If you have something like that, then yes, bring that. You know, maybe the pie plate would be a good idea just to make sure that you have the correct adapter. You know, it's certainly not necessary to reach across a parking lot.
You'll be able to put your car in the area where you'll be doing the operation. So if you want, you can have the mag mount on top of your car with a cable going over to wherever you're operating. That's a possibility.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and for this, it could be the hood of the car or any part of it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I have a question, and it may be for Dan or John. Do we know where the locations are likely to be in the case of a PSPS?
I think we only know of one for sure.
Yeah, at this point, there's a very likely location in Boulder Creek, the same one that was activated last year. There may well be others, but we have no information about that. So it's possible
could be
you'd
anywhere
be
in the
asked
county.
to head out to some unfamiliar spot and perhaps Bonnie Doon and be asked to set up a station there. And so we hope everyone will be equipped with maps of the county so that you'd be able to do that.
Can I make a suggestion, not to elaborate in this meeting, but if we think there might be areas like Bonnie Doon, it might be interesting to check out simplex paths from those locations to wherever, so that we have an idea of where people could actually go if the repeaters are down. But not really for this meeting, just a suggestion for the future.
Yeah, we're not sure what parts of the county we'd be asked to go to. So sure, doing general surveys, being aware of signal paths is always helpful.
Yeah, it depends how much we know ahead of time. If I had an assignment and it was possible to do it, I would go to the assignment first, find the location and scout it out and include hopefully seeing what kind of coverage it had. But that may not be possible. With this location in Boulder Creek, was it three of us or four of us actually went there and had a tour of the place, and we know just about all there was to know about it before we actually went there for the PSPS, but I think that's going to be the exception.
Do we know how we would be directed individually to a particular location?
Yeah, you'll get the direction from one of the ARES ECs or someone acting in their stead. So it would be me or Bob or Karen or possibly Dan or Gary, K6 PDL. It'll be a formal ARES deployment, so you'll hear about it through the ARES organization. Probably through email, since we expect email will be up for at least most of us. But as always, if nothing's working and you're available, please tune in to K6BJ, assuming the repeater's operating. If the repeater's not operating, listen on that frequency anyway.
Because we'll use it as a simplex
We'll
frequency.
use it as a simplex frequency. Yes, we will.
Output.
More go bag questions or general questions?
Bob, do you remember what the most forgotten item was last time? Or Kathy, if she's on the call?
Actually, it would be Karen. She was doing the go bags.
Oh.
There was something that I wanted to ask real quick. As far as the vests are concerned, we can take CERT vests and turn them inside out, right?
Yes, but we also have loaner.
Yes,
Loaner vests would be
No.
much preferred.
yes.
No, we cannot turn them inside out because then there's no reflective safety markings on the outside, so they're not a safety vest anymore.
Mhm.
Touche.
Okay, very good. Okay, back over to Karen.
So the one of the more commonly forgotten items last time around was toileting supplies. There was some confusion as to, anything was acceptable from a shovel and a roll of toilet paper to, I had people bring fold up toilets and buckets and everything in between. But some people were a little confused by that entry and didn't bring
Didn't bring anything?
anything.
Ah,
I'd have to go back to my notes for sure to know what was the most commonly forgotten. a surprising number of people also had trouble finding their paper copy of their amateur radio license to be able to print out to bring. So that was also forgotten more often than I thought it would be.
I believe we now have a link on the XCZ site to spot to print your license. Do you know if that's right, Karen?
I believe you're correct.
It might be
but
true.
I have not looked at that link for a while.
Okay.
Yeah, we should check that out because it was quite a difficult, it was hard to find where to actually get your real license last time.
The link is active and it does take you to the FCC site with the information step by step on how to do that.
Right.
Well, thank you, Jo Marie.
Yeah, when I followed the FCC information the first time, it didn't work. I could print out a facsimile, but it also had a little wording at the bottom saying this is not the official license.
That's okay. The facsimile will work.
Okay, I did find out there was a back door to find the exact place to print that. If I can look that up and see if I can post it on Facebook or something.
Okay, I'd like to move on because the important part of this is taking the emergency reports and using the emergency reporting form, which I had a slide on setting up a compost. Sorry, Dan, did you want to talk to this?
Oh, when you said compost, I thought something else.
Sorry.
That's what I thought too. That was pretty funny.
Back to the toileting discussion. I understand.
Exactly.
Oh, by the way, Dan, you know what? I was teasing with you about the CERT vest turned inside out. I was just
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, yeah, anyway, you know, the thing about this is that you have a lot of options for how you set up your compost. It's kind of an individual thing. You know, I would go for something similar to what's in the picture there, but I don't think you need to go out and buy a pop-up if you don't have one. It just could be terrible sitting in the sun all day. But you know, and the thing about too, this maintain a professional demeanor, I just need to stress that you know, essentially you'll be representing the county, and so it's important to look as professional and act as professional as we can in doing that. So, and that's why we well, I think that's enough said. So yeah, and the other thing is that some of these shifts possibly could span a complete overnight, or you know, like midnight to 8 a.m. shift. Okay, John.
Vince was our token night person, and
Yeah.
Allie.
It was cold.
Yeah.
That was surprising too.
Okay, Karen, I'll turn things over to you so you can explain the important emergency reporting information.
Awesome. So let me share my screen. Okay, is everybody seeing this presentation?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're going to be talking about the emergency reporting form, which has been renamed. It used to be called the PSPS emergency reporting form, but now it's just the emergency reporting form because we are liable to use it for additional emergencies. And we're going to be talking about ICS 214 logging. So this is the front and back side of the emergency reporting form, the new version, which is, as you might note at the bottom, a draft version. It is currently going through the approval process. If we had a PSPS, unfortunately, tomorrow, we would probably be asked to use the old form because that's the latest approved version, but we expect this new version to be approved imminently, which is why we're training to the new version. The main difference for those who are familiar with the old form, the main difference is that the new version of the form no longer has the COVID screening questions, and that freed up room for a more detailed section on the medical and fire side of the page, and more room in the more detailed section on the police side of the page. In that respect, we no longer need to deal with the COVID screening questions because the 911 services don't care anymore. So that makes a little bit less work for us, which is nice. So for those who are new to this form, it is designed to be printed double-sided. Please print these double-sided. It will save you a lot of headache because if you print it single-sided, you'll have two different emergency report forms, and you'll be scrambling to try to figure out which is the right piece of paper. If you cannot print these double-sided, please reach out. The EOC can print them double-sided. And for a PSPS, we will be able to hopefully get them to you in time before a deployment in the correct double-sided formats. In most cases, this form can be used single-sided. So it's not designed to be like fill out one side and then flip it over and fill out the other, because that's a pain in the ass. It's designed that you just choose one side or the other and use it as a single-sided form. There will be some cases where you might have to use both sides of the form, but that should hopefully be rare. This form is both a place to record information as well as a prompt to help remember what to ask the reporting party, which is what we call the member of the public who is reporting the emergency. I don't expect any of us, myself included, to remember all the questions that 911 has for someone who's reporting an emergency off the top of our head. So that's part of the reason we have this form, so that we can go, oh yeah, I'm supposed to, ask them X and Y and Z. So one of the most important things about this form, before you start writing anything on the form, you want to find the relevant side of the form, the relevant section of the form, and the relevant subsection of the form before you start writing. So for example, if someone's reporting that they smell gas, that would be on this side of the form. Can everybody see my cursor, by the way?
Yes.
Great. So that will be on this side of the form in the fire department section, in the gas smell subsection. And once we locate that, we can start writing on the form. And that saves us from starting to scribble on one side of the form and then having to go, oh, wait, I'm on the wrong side, and flipping it around, and that heartache. If it's appropriate, please do not hesitate to use multiple sections of the form. So if you have a car accident, which would be here under the accident subsection under the fire department, if there's also an injury in that car accident, please also fill out the medical section, for example. Police should a little bit less often be combined with medical and fire, which is why police is on the other side of the form and medical and fire are on the same side of the form as each other. If it's necessary, you can also use multiple sheets, which is multiple copies of the form. So if you have two people with medical issues, fill out the form once for person number one and fill out the form again for person number two. And then use the sheet numbers at the bottom to notate that there's two sheets. and we'll go that way. This is the form that's labeled on the go bag list as emergency report questionnaire. Just to be perfectly clear as to what we're talking about from the go bag list. Also, this form is, like your 214 logs, a legal document. We are going to be collecting them when you are done with your shift. In a PSPS, we will be collecting any emergency report forms that you fill out, and they will go into the public record or the publicly accessible record. Possibly. They do have a little bit of personal information, so that might be shielded from public record, but they will go into the county records. Like the 214 form, don't doodle in the margins. Not that there's much margin on this form to be able to doodle in, and keep anything you write down on this form professional. So now, how do we use this form? We've talked a little bit about the, writing on it, but let's walk through a scenario where we're actually using this form. So a person with an emergency approaches us. They might say something along the lines of, I need help. My son is having trouble breathing. Please help me. I don't know what to do. Now, what do we do with this information? So first of all, we're going to extract the relevant information from this phrase that the reporting party has used. And the red will make sense in a minute. They have trouble breathing. So we know this is a medical complaint. They refer to this person as their son, so we know that this person is male. Trouble breathing is going to be our chief complaint. And the fact that they're having trouble breathing means that they are breathing, which is good. And trouble breathing is also going to be most of the summary that we'll use in the section on top. I'm going to skip ahead so the red and the pink will make sense. I'm just going to get the rest of the slide displayed. Sorry. Okay, so we've extracted the relevant information from this sentence, which is all the information that's circled in red on this emergency reporting form. And then the first thing we are concerned with is this top slightly bolded box here. And this box contains the first batch of information that we need in order to make our initial report. So the first thing we need to do after we've extracted information from what the reporting party spouts is we need to get enough information from them to fill out this top box. So we need to be able to determine what type of emergency this is. In this case, we already know, but we may not, depending on what the reporting party says. We need enough information to decide on a summary. Again, in this case, we have that information already, but we may not. And we need enough information to know where the emergency is happening. This location is where the emergency is happening. It's not our location. It might be our location if, say, her son is in her car and she's brought him to the emergency reporting station, but that location there is wherever the emergency is. Where do we want 911 services to respond to? So we're going to ask for this information and finish filling out that first top box. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our initial report to our net control operator or whoever is our relay to 911. So we might say something like communications relay, ARES 9. They might respond, ARES 9, communications relay, go ahead. And then we might say, communications relay, ARES 9, I have a medical emergency at my station. This is in the case where she has brought her son with her in the car. And then we give our FCC call sign to keep it legal. Okay, I've spouted a lot of information. I'm going to pause here real quick. Any questions so far?
I did have a question about the using multiple pages, or maybe you're going to answer that when describing the, I forgot what you called it already, just the identifying number for the incident that you had at the top of the page.
The report ID?
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
if we,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
guess if we have a reporting party telling us about one emergency and there's, say, multiple people, like there's a car accident with multiple injuries, and so we're filling out 2 sheets for the one emergency report,
Right,
we will use the same report ID on both of those sheets
right, good.
and then number it sheet 1 of 2 and sheet 2 of 2. Does that answer your question?
Perfect.
Great. Any more
Karen,
questions?
Karen, you haven't gotten to the trouble breathing point yet, right? You've just said medical emergency, but given no details.
That is correct. I have not reported that this person has trouble breathing yet, and I will explain where we report that
Okay,
in a little bit. I just wanted to pause and wait for questions or give some space for questions. Okay, and more questions? Okay, great. So the purpose of this initial report that we're making is with the least information possible, which is just the information that's in that top box that we need in order for 911 services to start help coming in the right direction. That is the entire purpose of this initial report. They are going to start rolling the resources, in this case, an ambulance, out to the emergency location as soon as we make this initial report. And then they will give a more detailed report coming up, and then they will update in this case, the ambulance with the additional details as they're on their way. So this gets help to the person who needs it as quickly as possible. So we keep details out of this initial report. They just need to know that it's medical, fire, police. You can give slightly more. You can say, I have a car accident, I have a gas smell, I have a medical, but keep it very brief and very high level for this initial report, just so that we can start these resources rolling.
Good question. Can you go over the report ID one more time?
I will be going over the report ID later, I believe.
Okay,
Yes.
I'll wait.
Comment,
Comes later.
Roberta, real quick.
Go ahead, comment.
Yeah, just one thing. We need to cut the person off in order to get that information relayed and then say, can you hold on one moment while I get help coming, and then go back and get the rest of the information, correct?
You can definitely do that. If they respond to the emergency situation by babbling nonstop and they will not stop to let you do a report, you can either just get on your radio and ignore them for a second and talk over them, or you can say, please hold on, I'm going to start, whichever technique works best in that particular situation. But yes, we do want to, as soon as we do have this information, we want to get this information from the reporting party quickly. If they're going on and on about, oh my God, I saw smoke and it was looking like this and this, and and I'm worried about the birds, and is it going to be safe for me to breathe, and so on, and they don't get to the point of, well, where did they see the smoke? Please do ask them to stop and tell you where this is happening so that you can make this initial report quickly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roberta.
Aaron, I'm back to you.
Okay.
If we have somebody coming up with trouble breathing, how do we know if it's a medical emergency?
Because somebody having trouble breathing is always a medical emergency. And it's not our job to determine how much of an emergency it is. Our job is to relay this information to 911. We're basically acting like the person's telephone. So if they think that it's an emergency enough to contact us and ask us to, and say this is an emergency, then we pick up the radio and we report the emergency. Now, when we get to triage, we'll talk about, well, if there's multiple people reporting emergencies, we might prioritize. And that might mean that a person who comes up to us reporting something is going to have to wait a bit until the airwaves are clear or until we're done with higher priority people. But it's not for us to make the determination as to whether or not it's an emergency. If they feel it is, we go ahead and report it.
Okay, so we accept whatever they define as an emergency without modifying it.
Yep. If it needs any filtering, 911 services will do it on their side.
Okay.
So if they come back and say, oh, that's not a real emergency, we're not going to respond to it, then that's on them, not on us. We do not have the training to make that determination.
We shouldn't be a filter.
No. Okay, so our communications relay or our net control is then going to take our initial report and they are going to connect it to 911 services. So they may, in this example, they do get on the phone because they may be in a location that still has phone service and call 911 on our behalf. So they may get 911, what is your emergency? And report something along the lines of, this is ARES relaying for ARES 9. I have a preliminary report of a medical emergency at ARES 9, detailed report to follow. Now, for the PSPSs, exactly, our tactical calls and that you'll be using, and whether you're calling on the phone or calling somebody on a radio, those will be told to you if you are in the net control position closer, when we determine exactly how that will be for the PSPS event. But this was how we were set up to operate during the last PSPS. On the phone, 911 services may go that they acknowledge preliminary report of a medical emergency at ARES 9, and they may give us something called a run number. A run number is important. It's a number that NetCom, which is 911 services, uses to track the emergency event. There is a place on the emergency report form for the run number to be put down so that we can correlate the two systems after the event. If they do not give us a run number, we don't worry about it. But if they do give us a run number, the run number will get relayed back from our net control, from our communications relay to the ARES station in the field that reported the emergency, so they can include that on their emergency report form. So while our net control is making this initial report to 911, in the field, we are going to interview the reporting party. We're going to first look at our form and identify the information that we need to get from them by using the form and seeing, basically fill in the blanks. So in the case of a medical emergency, we're going to fill out the remainder of the medical section. We need to remember to be compassionate and understanding when we formulate our questions, but at the same time, we do need to elicit this needed information as quickly and concisely as possible. So try to put on your 911 operator hat here, and your questions might be, is your son having any other symptoms? How old is your son? And so on and so forth. Try to keep it, try to formulate your questions so that you get concise answers, and try to also be compassionate in the way that you formulate your questions as much as possible. So we're gonna interview them and get all the rest of this information and fill it in. And then we are going to pick up our radio and we are going to make a detailed report to our net control operator or our communications relay, whatever we're calling them on that particular day of the week. So here's where we give the more detailed report. First we do the exchange, make sure that they're ready to take our report. And then we go communications relay, ARES 9. Medical emergency is a 12-year-old male with difficulty breathing located at my station. No other symptoms. And you give your call sign. You may need to spout more. You may need to go, they have allergies to X, Y, and Z. Your detailed report may be quite detailed and quite long. But try to keep it as concise as possible. And speak slowly and clearly. The person you're talking to needs to write this all down and then be able to relay it on to Netcom. So keep in mind they're writing, don't talk faster than they can write. At this point, our net control is going to come back to us, confirm medical at our station. They can confirm additional information if they feel a need to. And at this point, if they have a run number for us, they're going to give us the run number that we will write down on our form. Also, please remember to use appropriate message passing techniques like I spell or say again. If you need a fill for something, for example, if you didn't understand the run number, say again run number. The message passing techniques are going to be your clearest, most concise way of asking for fills and for getting that information across as needed. So our net control is going to, in this case, pick up the phone and make the detailed report to 911. If they have a run number, it's going to be, I have a detailed report for run number 12345. If they don't have a run number, it's I have a detailed report to follow up on my previous call. And they're just going to reiterate the report that we just gave them. At this point, we've given the detailed report to our net control, to our relay, to our net control. And the next thing we're going to do is you're going to confirm and reassure the reporting party. Something along the lines of, ma'am, I've alerted 911 services of your son's condition. Be very careful during this section of the exchange with the reporting party. You do not want to promise anything. You do not say that help is on the way unless we have a report from our relay saying that Netcom has told them that help is on the way. And in that case, we don't say help is on the way. It's 911 services says that help is on the way. So please, we promise absolutely nothing. We have nothing under our control. All we can do is alert 911 services to the emergency. And that is the only thing we're going to tell them that we have done ourselves. Everything else I'm going to repeat this because it's important. Everything else that we might tell them is only information that we have gotten back from our relay. And it's prefaced with 911 services says that XYZ. If they ask if help is on the way, it's, I've alerted them of your condition. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to finish filling out the emergency report form. And this is mostly information we provide ourselves with a little bit of information that we still need from the reporting party. These fields are only necessary to be completed on one side of the form. Don't feel a need to flip it over and fill it out. That's just a waste of everyone's time. Only on the side of the, even if you write on both sides of the form, you only need to fill out these header fields and footer fields on one side of the form. So the header has a date, a time, a station, which is the name of the emergency reporting station that you've set up, which will probably also be your tactical call sign, and the report ID. And I promised we'd talk about the report ID, so here we go. You generate the report ID from your call sign and a 3-digit serial number. So for example, K6HAM-001 would be K6 HAM's first emergency report of the event. And just keep incrementing the serial number so that each one is unique. Reporter's info, this is the last information we need from the reporting party. This is contact information for the person reporting the emergency, just in case 911 services needs to get in, or somebody needs to get in touch with them to follow up on it. And as an aside, we do not, under any circumstances, transmit the reporting party's name over the air. And we don't transmit any of the reporting party's information over the air unless it's directly asked for by 911 services. But under no circumstances, even if we are directly asked for their name, do we report the name of the reporting party. We also do not report the names of anybody who is the like a medical patient. We do not report their names over the air under any circumstances. Again, even if directly asked. When the ambulance shows up, please feel free to communicate the injured person's name to the paramedics who have shown up. But it doesn't go over the air because over the air is publicly accessible and this information is sensitive. Okay, and then the footer has our name, our call sign, our signature, the run number, and the sheet numbers. So one of the things that was a lessons learned from the first time we did the power exercise is that if these fields can take a while to fill out. And so to save time, we recommend that you pre-fill some of the required information, such as your name and call sign. Fill out as much of the required information as you can ahead of time to make it as easy as possible for you if you get, a whole run of people with emergencies who are trying to report them very quickly. And then there's less paperwork to do when you're in the middle of it. Okay.
I have a question.
Yep, I was just about to pause for questions, so let's do that.
So just for the top red circle there, the when would you be, or how would you be assigned your station ID? After you do your check-in and after you do your verification that you have all your stuff on the go checklist that you do, What the next step, I assume, is that they say, okay, you're good to go for the exercise. Go to this location and set up your station. What's the next step? Is someone going to tell you, hey, check in, go to this channel and check in with net control? And does net control assign you a station ID or what?
So when you are assigned to a station, to one of us who's going to be evaluating you and helping you learn from your experience, we will be attached to a station. And so you'll be at like station A or station B or station C and so on. And at that point, so it's after the go bag check, you'll be told who to go with, and that will be that's when you'll be getting your station assignment.
Okay.
For an actual PSPS, before you get in your car and start driving to a station, you'll know what station you're going to. You may not know exactly what it's called, but you will know where to go, and that where you're going has a station identifier attached to it. At the worst, when you get there and you relieve the previous shift, you'll find out what your tactical call sign is.
Okay, because the last actual PSPS, you were commenting that we were all kind of getting wrong the station stuff and the report ID stuff. So, not at the exercise, but at the actual one.
That's entirely possible. It may not have trickled down quite the way we wanted it to. Our tactical was ARES 9 for the last PSPS, which was weird. We didn't pick it. Netcom picked it for us.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
Erin?
you. Yep.
What's the actual time? Is that the time the person first steps up, or when you finish doing your report, or when you finish reporting everything?
You know what? I will take any time that's approximately that's ideally it's the time that they first step up. But if you aren't sure exactly, because you're busy reporting an emergency and that's more urgent, if it's the time that you finish filling it out, I'm not gonna bite anyone's head off over that.
Okay, thanks.
Great question. More questions?
Karen, how much detail of this do we carry across to the 214?
Great question. We'll be talking about 214s in just a minute, Gary, if you can hold on.
Absolutely.
Okay. More questions? Okay, moving on to the 214 then. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to log the significant activity, because anytime someone reports an emergency to us and anytime we relay an emergency to our net control for relaying to 911, that is a significant activity. Or a notable activity, to use the actual wording that's on the ICS 214 form. In the sample ICS 214, Gary, it says accepted report of unconscious person, or in the case of our one that we just went through, accepted report of person with trouble breathing. That would be sufficient detail. But I will accept less detail. I will be happy with less detail even. If you run out of time and you can't log in this much detail, received report ID, reported report ID. That's all I need to know. But I do need the report ID, and I do need to know, and I do need the time that we received the report and the time that we reported the report to be logged.
Karen, I'm thinking there are actually two communications to the net control function.
Yep.
You don't need to log those separately?
If you have enough time to log them separately, feel free to. Preliminary report, detailed report. If you are short time, I will take received and reported as just like that.
Okay,
And in which case I would use the time of the detailed report as the reported time.
and to take it a step farther, do we log the arrival time of the ambulance?
If they are, the ambulance may or may not be coming to your location.
Well, in this example, they are.
In this example, they are. Yes, I would say that an ambulance showing up at your station is a notable activity that you should try to log.
Okay,
But if they're going to a different location, you're not going to be able to.
do we log the fact that we sent the reporting person back to their house to wait for the ambulance?
Um,
I'm just questioning how much we
Yeah.
have to log, that's all.
you don't need to send them back to their house. They can choose to wait wherever they want to wait.
Well,
You
if
can
the,
let
if the,
them know that you have no further information. But if they're, you know, you can let them know that there's nothing more that you can do, and that they're free. You're done collecting information for them, and they are free to go back.
yeah, I'm imagining a situation where the son having trouble breathing is still at home. That's all.
Yes, you could say, it's we've gotten all the information we need from you. You're free to go back home.
Okay, but do we need to log that activity? I'm wondering about the legal issues.
It's great if you can. If you can't because you have a big line of people, that's fine.
Okay,
Basically triage it. Use
Okay.
your best judgment. If you have one person in an hour, I would expect to see a lot more detail than if you have a line of 3 people deep your entire shift.
okay. All right,
During the exercise next Sunday, we will probably keep you busy.
Yes. More questions before I continue to some general ICS 214 reminders.
I have another question.
Yes.
Ideally, are you switching them between forms so that you get your 214 filled out after the emergency reporting in between? I mean, unless I guess there are too many reports and you're going to have to just do it later.
So I would sort of switch between the two. If you can juggle it. If you can't, worry about getting the emergency reported on the emergency reporting form as being more important, and getting the emergency reported to NetCom, to 911 services. That's the most important thing. If you need to come back later and go, oh, well, my time on my emergency reporting form is X time, so that's when I received the report and reported it, that's okay.
Okay.
That really is. The emergency reporting form is also a legal document, and is the more important document at this time. But before you turn in your ICS 214, every single emergency report form that you generated during your shift needs to be on your ICS 214.
Yeah.
Great question. Any more questions?
Just a statement about the incident name. We do have an activation number, and it is going to be XCZ0801 2021.
I'm not writing that down. Should I be writing
It
it
was,
down?
it was in the documents that you were sent on Thursday, but I was just calling it out.
That's what I'm hoping it's in the documents. Thank you.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, so on the ICS 214 form, these are a few reminders from some of the most common issues that we see with the ICS 214 forms. So box 2, the operational period is an ICS operational period. So this is what the incident commander is using as part of their planning process. It is not your shift hours. It is not the time that you are actually operational for. It is the ICS operational period. If you are unsure what the ICS operational period that you are operating in is, then please ask somebody. You should be given that information when you are given your activation number when you were first activated for a deployment. In the case of the PSPS training, the power exercise, you can use the date of the exercise, and the operational period is 12:30 to 17:30.
I've got a question.
Yes.
So in a real emergency, let's say when, for instance, we've got fires and stuff like that, and we're engaged or deployed, whatever you want to call it, and we get the operational period. We get it from the commander or what have you. If it's a fire or something like that, this thing could go on for weeks, right? And they're not going to know when it ends, as far as from what date to what date. They're not going to know when it's going to end. Do we leave that open?
So it's not the incident period, Bob. It's the operational period. An operational period is a subset of the incident. Usually in an event like a fire, it's a 12 or a 24-hour operational period that's used. So it might be, if it's a 24-hour operational period, it may be from 0800 to 0759 the next day. And that's your operational period. So every day when you go out for your shift, there's a new operational period.
And that's not, and just for everybody to remember, is that's not your shift time either. It's
Nope.
just the operational period that they have for that section. Okay. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you, Bob. Other things, please make sure your name and call sign are in box 6. That's really important. And in general for ARES, the ICS 214 is a unit activity log. And in general with ARES, we are units of 1. We are independent operators. Even if we are deployed in pairs, what technically is happening when we deploy in pairs most of the time is that we have 2 units of 1 who happen to be stationed together. So the resources assigned, your name goes in box 6, and generally nobody else's name goes in box 6, just your name. Note anything significant, especially if there are any times that you are not at your post. If you take a break, you don't have to say why you took a break, but put down that you took a break and when you're off post and when you're back at post. Please keep in mind this, as well as your emergency reporting forms. Like I said, these are legal documents. They may be scrutinized after an incident. The ICS 214 forms will be asked for by the media, and the media will be given them after an incident, and they may end up in court. So please keep them professional. Please do not put down anything that you would be embarrassed to have on the front page of the Sentinel, or that you would be embarrassed having to explain in a court of law. So jokes, things that you're doing in order to pass time during slow times on shift, don't belong on this document, but anything significant does. And please don't forget to sign this document. That's been, people have been doing a great job signing their ICS 214s recently, but we used to have some problems with them not being signed. And then the last thing that's a little tricky is box 1, where it says incident name. We put down 2 things in box 1. We put both the incident name and the activation number in box 1.
A
Any
question,
questions?
a question for Joe Marie. Joe Marie, on the continuation pages for ICS 214, it looks like their incident name is the old one. Will you be providing some with the current incident name on them?
Okay, I will correct that.
What do you mean on the sample, Gary?
Yeah, well, on the blank forms that are provided for the ICS 214, the 17, the continuation pages.
You mean page 2?
Yeah,
Yeah,
page 2, we can't use those.
well, you could correct it before you print it out.
Okay, are they fill-in forms?
Yes, they're the fillable forms.
Okay, very good.
And you can click in that, and my apologies, I thought I had got those all corrected, but
Yeah,
I didn't.
Never mind, I meant not where I can look at it. If they're fill-in, I'm fine.
Yes, they're fill-in.
Okay.
Gary,
Yep.
the other thing I might recommend, you're one of our more advanced operators at this point. Print out a completely blank ICS 214 and practice filling in the headers by hand.
Oh, okay.
Because during an actual activation, we will not be providing specially made blank forms with the header information filled out for you. You will be expected to fill out the headers by hand.
Okay, that's fair enough.
More questions?
I have a question. I had a little bit of internet trouble, so you may have actually answered it. When it comes to, you made the point about when we're deployed normally, not for an exercise, there's typically 2 operators there. So and you said each one of these forms is is specific to us, so we would be the only one filling out box 6. Since 2 ham radio operators are there, are we in a normal exercise both filling out like essentially the same ICS 214 form, but only box 6 would be different?
Yes and no. Usually we're doing slightly different things. So if you're both at, say, an emergency reporting station during a PSPS, and generally you're going to have one person take the emergency report.
Right.
The other person might call it in while the first person continues the interview. For example, you might divide labor that way. Or if you have multiple people trying to report emergencies, you might each be taking separate emergency reports at the same time. You log your significant activity. Your partner logs their significant activity.
Okay, so the bottom line is then that we would be filling out our own 214 forms, and because that was one of the things that you commented about at the last actual deployment was nothing happened for the entire 8 hours, and I was the one writing stuff down on the 214 form, and I did not put the other person's name on my form. And then you're like, where's the other form? Like, well, I don't know. I didn't fill out the other form. Okay. So that's that. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. I may have. Let's talk more about that offline, Vince.
Okay.
I have another question then.
Go for it.
So you mentioned that maybe one person takes a report and the other one radios it in. Do they both need to fill out the ICS 214, their own ICS 214s for that? Because let's say I took the report, so I write down that I took the report. You radio it in, so you write down that you radioed it in. Is that the way it would work?
Yes, that's the way it would work.
Thank you.
Exactly. You're welcome. More questions?
Quick one, real quick.
Okay.
Roberta, if you have a scribe, how do you handle the paperwork for that?
You have your scribe do it.
Just have them do it, sign their name and everything.
Well, if you notice, the prepared by name and the resources assigned name don't have to be the same name.
Ah,
But generally,
right.
if you're like a net control operator and you have a scribe, I would have your scribe do your 214. You're going to be, or you do your 214, your choice.
Okay.
Depends on
So
what-
would you suggest then, if the scribe did the 214, put both people's on section 6, but the position could be radio operator scribe and radio operator transmitter or something like that, could you not?
that is one of the situations where it would be acceptable to do a single 214 if you were doing it that way.
Thank you.
And then you could put both names in box 6. But in general, when we're deployed in the field, we're units of 1. So there's lots of exceptions, and for this particular circumstances, you know exactly what the best way to do it. But and we're all still, we can all still improve and learn together. More questions on this? Okay, great. Next, we will have John talking about what do we do when we have multiple simultaneous emergencies?
Okay, would you stop sharing, please? Thanks for that, Karen. I always learn something every time I hear you describe it, and I did this time as well. So what happens with these deployments? Any of you who have had any experience like this, most of the time there's nothing happening at all. But sometimes lots of things happen at the same time. And that's the second situation I want to talk about. The triage priorities are simple. First priority is life. Any threat to life or a serious injury, that's the highest priority. Second priority is property. Any danger of significant destruction, that's a second priority to an immediate threat to life. And third priority is environment, environmental pollution or destruction. So if you get simultaneously, two people come to you simultaneously, one reporting a heart attack and the other reporting a house fire, then this rule makes it fairly simple. They're obviously both emergencies, they're both important. You want to report them both as soon as you can, but the priority goes to the life, to the threat to life, to the report of the heart attack. Questions?
Question, Roberta.
Yeah.
If you get two people that walk up at the same time with significant threats to life or injury, could you start two sheets, or would you just take one, whoever got there first, and then the other?
Well, you need to use your judgment, but if they both seem like they're important emergencies, I would try to do them both at the same time. That is, you really need a very small amount of information to get the right resource rolling. And you want to get that top box in the form filled out and radioed in. The most important thing is to be accurate and clear, but then of secondary, but also importance is to be quick. And you could do that to get that preliminary report in from both reporting parties, and then go back and fill in the other information from each. And that's how I would try to handle that.
And John,
Sounds good, thank you.
report those to net control in the same transmission then?
You could, if you have the information at the ready at the same time. You could be in the same transmission. You just make it clear that you're reporting a more than one incident.
Okay.
The radio reports for the initial information are short, as you saw from Karen's explanation. And if you can get your reporting parties to cooperate and answer your questions and give you the small amount of information you need to do a good initial report, that's can be very quick. So you could handle 2 or even 3 simultaneously that way, one after the other, and then follow up with the details. If you get a report of a structure fire and you have the address, that's all the 911 center needs to know to get a truck rolling in the right direction. And they will do that.
So let me ask a couple questions. What would people categorize a report of a gas leak?
Great. Anybody want to volunteer how to handle that?
Property, probably, unless it's a house with people inside.
Right.
Right. And what about wires down?
I think that's a life threat. It depends. It depends where wires are down, if they're on the house, or could be property, it could be life, depending on the situation.
Yeah, I would treat that as a threat to life.
Yeah.
And you don't really want you yourself or the reporting party to experiment to see if the lines are really live or anything. No, don't do that. If there's wires on the ground, that's an emergency. You report it and stay away from them, no matter what they look like. So during the exercise next Sunday, we will start off with, a single reporter giving you something to report. And by the end of the half hour, if we're doing it right, we'll have a couple people showing up at the same time at your station with multiple emergencies. And some of them will be more important than others. And you might have someone who is really, really exercised because their kitten is upset and has stopped eating. And they think that's worthy of calling 911. And if they judge it to be an emergency, your job is to report it, but you don't have to give it priority over someone's report of wires down or a apparent heart attack.
So John, there's nothing that we do not report.
If a reporting party comes to you and says, I need 911 for my kitten, then that's what you report. And don't worry, the 911 operators have plenty of experience with sorting out this kind of stuff. That's their job, and they know how to do it, and we don't.
So I wanted to go back to the wires down clarification, because what you're saying, there's no specific person whose life is in danger there, but it is a situation that is dangerous to life if somebody shows up at that spot.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
It could be either or, if they're across a road, I definitely would think life, because unless you can get it blockaded and things like that, but if they're coming to you, you can't leave your post to protect it. So yes, I would judge it as a life issue, but if it's on the side of the road, and not impeding, maybe it's a property thing. But I always go, doesn't hurt to escalate it, be the highest,
Use your
need.
best judgment.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's going to come back at you and say, you know, this really was a life issue, you know.
Well, remember, we're reporting everything.
Right.
The only question we're talking about here is when you get several things simultaneously, which do you
Exactly.
jump on first?
Exactly. That's only where you're making a judgment call is which
Right.
one do you report first? You're not,
Right.
it doesn't go beyond this at all.
Right. And the thing is, if you need to prioritize and you got two people, make sure you tell the second person, I'll be right with you. I need to deal with this first, you know, et cetera. You know, you don't have to justify it, but just do let the second party know that you are need to take care of something else first. Because I did notice that on the first power event, there wasn't sometimes that update back to the reporting parties. And it's easy to forget. You know, you get rattled, you know, and you got to get it over the radio. You do need to keep them updated. And like Karen said, no promises, but just kind of say, it's been reported, or I need to get this other one first, and then I'll come back to you. That'll help wonders about calming down the situation. Otherwise, they will be in your face.
During the exercise, there may be traffic on the frequency that we're telling you to use when you get an emergency to report. So that is one of the things you will have to deal with. You've got to wait till there's a clear channel to net control, just as you would with any other radio communication. Any more questions about triage?
So which category is my kitten that won't eat in?
The other, the other category.
That's in category 4.
If you
I
feel
have a
it's
quick
life threatening, if you feel it's life threatening to your kitten, then
I have a question, Roberta.
Yeah.
If the other traffic is, you know, shooting the breeze type thing, are we allowed, if it's an emergency and it's a life threatening, to break in when there's a break
Absolutely.
and say emergency like we always say on the net?
Absolutely.
Well,
That's
the new word is emergency, but yeah, we haven't gotten that in the.
I was going to say, we haven't trained to that yet, so
No, whichever, but we can break in.
Right,
That's all
right.
I'm asking.
if you have an urgent emergency to report, you don't want to trample someone else's radio traffic because you won't be understood and you'll just slow everything down. But you want to break in at the earliest possible moment and let net control know that you have emergency traffic. Then it's net control's job to assess what to do, because there may be simultaneous emergency reports from other stations.
Right. Thank you.
good question.
The phrase "shooting the breeze" bothered me a little bit. We should not be shooting the breeze at all during one of these events.
Well, that's true. But of course, we're on amateur frequencies, and there are amateurs who haven't been through our excellent training, and they might be using the frequency. During the exercises probably won't happen, but it's just part of you know, knowing how to operate your radio.
Well, John, I will relate that during the previous exercise, I had to wait a little bit while net control in one of the stations were having a friendly conversation. And maybe that's a reminder to treat the time as very precious.
Yeah, absolutely. And in that circumstance, I mean, you might feel that net control should have done a better job. That might be true, but it's also incumbent on you in that circumstance to know how to interrupt in a way to indicate that you have a priority message. Okay, so we're about through. Just to be ready for next Sunday. Check your go bag. Make sure your radios are programmed. Read all of the documents. There's several documents, and it can be a little confusing when we spread things across several documents. That's because they're not our forms. We're using the ICS forms and trying to conform to documentation in a way that's compatible with the rest of the ICS system. So please read and understand all the documents. The most important thing for this exercise is the emergency reporting form. Make sure you bring paper copies, double-sided, and make sure you're familiar with the form because you'll need to fill it out quickly, but also accurately and legibly, and also with your 214 forms. And please show up promptly at the time you were assigned for the exercise. And all of this training counts as ARES hours, and you'll want to report your hours to Dawn at the end of the month, as you always do. Questions? Anything that we should talk more about before we end this call?
So yeah, I have a question. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
214 form. I saw the last entry on there was that I got home safe. That would imply that I'm not finishing my form until after I'm done with the exercise. So am I emailing that form to Karen after the fact?
For the exercise, we'll be taking the form from you when you leave. That's an artifact of our exercise.
Okay.
During an actual deployment, we would like you to note your safe arrival home. Among other things, you're actually covered by insurance until you get home. And so that's documentation that's potentially useful to you personally.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
And also, we have transitioned away from using JPEGs to transmit the forms. So if you were really activated, the request now is to create a PDF. And in the minutes from last week's meeting, do offer a couple suggestions on how to do that, accomplish that with a phone. You can take a snapshot and then there's an app to convert it to a PDF.
Okay. Okay.
This is going to be stressful, and it's also going to be fun because having gone through the exercise, you'll be actually well prepared for this deployment, and maybe a little disappointed if there aren't any heart attacks or house fires on your shift. But of course, that's also good.
So Vince, you did it last time. What was one thing that you thought you were missing when you arrived or were dealing with the actual event exercise that you wish you had known ahead of time?
Oh, the exercise and not the actual?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, known ahead of time. Oh, yes. I'll tell you the exact thing. I didn't know that I only had 10 minutes to set up my station until you told me that go. And I was like, what? So that I didn't know there was a time constraint. And while I got done in 10 minutes, I was all of a sudden I was kind of like, okay, so yeah, that's good to know.
Well, and in reality, you may not need, that won't be in real, but, we're trying to put some pressure in the situation just to kind of give you some anxiety.
Well, I approached it another way. I think it's, well, I would probably like to know it in advance. It made sense that a person should be able to set up their station in an expeditious manner and be ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's what I took away from it. Not just that, you should just be ready to go. You should have almost like a maybe not a checklist, but like, this is what I need to get ready. I got to have my forms out, be ready to take a message a report as soon as I can. And so that's what I got out of that. And I
Yeah.
actually think that's pretty important. So.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone have anything else for the group? Questions or comments? Well, we will see you all Sunday at the sheriff's office, and we'll have an excellent training exercise.